How can we tell we are in the end time? Well, one of the main things that happens in the end time is the Antichrist takes over the world. He is also called the beast. Now, in Revelation 13, verse 7, it says, "The beast will make war against the saints," which would mean the Christian countries, the countries predominantly Christian. And it says he will overcome them, and then this war will give him power over every nation. Now, doesn't that sound like world conquest? I'm saying that what happens in the end time is the Antichrist takes over the world through war. Then at the end, Christ comes and takes the world back from the Antichrist. So I don't want to leave that part out. But I want to emphasize this part about the war and conquest of the world. My point is that the end time cannot be before technology gives us weapons of mass destruction. You know, in the 1600s, there was nobody who could conquer the world. In the 1800s, there was no way to conquer the world. Even in the 1900s, Hitler almost conquered the world, but he didn't. And well, he almost, we can't really say he almost did it, because there was a nation. There were two nations that God raised up, America and Russia. And but in our time, well, in our time, it's possible for one of the two superpowers to actually conquer the world. Now, there are two superpowers, America and Russia. Now, America is not going to do it, so that leaves Russia as the obvious answer, as a nation that will conquer the world, and the Antichrist has to be the ruler of Russia. He is supposed to be the ruler of Europe. That's what the Bible says, the beast. The term beast refers to Europe and the Roman Empire, and the ruler of the Roman Empire. Now, how can the ruler of Russia also be the ruler of Europe? Well, obviously, Russia conquers Europe. Duh. People talk about nuclear war being the end of the world. No. 1,000 times no. It's not the end of the world. It's simply the period in which the world can be conquered. In other words, nuclear war, or the threat of nuclear war, tells us we are in the end time, because this age, the nuclear age, is the age in which the world can be conquered for the first time. So this is a new way to see nuclear war, and it's a new way to see the end time. The end time, by definition, has to include the ability to conquer the world. That means the technology has to be there. And it's only in our time, our day, that the technology of weapon systems, of missiles, nuclear bombs, and also the communication systems, the computers. This is all evidence that we are in what is called the end time. Now, I want to emphasize, I'm not talking about the end of the world. The end time is simply the end of this age. We enter a new age, and it's actually the new heaven, new earth. See, we're at the end of the millennium right now. Revelation 20. St. Augustine was right in his book, The City of God. He wrote that, like, say, around 400 A.D. And the idea is, he said, the millennium in Revelation 20 is goes by the name of 1,000 years, but it is not really 1,000 years. It's at least 1,000 years. 1,000 years plus. And what happened was the church went with Augustine's view until the year 1030, when 1,000 years after 30 A.D. had passed, the church said, well, where is the return of Christ? And so they switched over to this new definition of the millennium, and they're wrong. They're wrong to do that. They should have stayed with Augustine. And anyway, what happens at the end of the millennium is the dragon rises out of the abyss. Now, this is simply talking about the return of the beast, because the dragon has 7 heads, 10 horns. The beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. And the beast is the Roman Empire. And the return of the beast is simply talking about Europe reunified through conquest by Russia. It's a little bit complicated, but that's what the return of the beast is. That's what the return of the dragon is. And now Revelation 20, verse 8, 9, and 10, it talks about the return of the dragon and the Gog and Magog, gathering the nations. And so that tells you how the return of the dragon takes place. It's through Gog and Magog. Gog is Gorbachev, Magog is Russia. Now I want to say that when you're studying Bible passages, sometimes there is secret knowledge hidden away in the implications. You don't go just by what's on the surface. Like the prophet Samuel said, you don't judge by the appearance, you judge by the heart. Or he said God judges by the heart. And we are to do the same thing. We don't go by what the appearance of the Bible, what it says superficially on the surface, but you go into the depth. And anyway, the implication is what I'm trying to say. Rather than what is explicit, go by what is implicit. And a case in point, when Christ was talking about God appearing to Moses in the burning bush, God said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now Christ says, this is evidence for the resurrection. Now this passage does not say one word, one syllable about resurrection, but Christ is going by the implication. See, the implication is that if God says, I am the God of Abraham, then he's saying that Abraham is still alive. Now, if God had said, I used to be the God of Abraham, then that would be evidence against the resurrection. But God says, I am. He uses the present tense. So the implication is that the resurrection is true. So what I'm saying is Christ is going by the implication rather than what is explicit. I'm doing the same thing in Revelation 13:7. It doesn't say one word about weapons, modern weapons, nuclear bombs, and so forth. But the implication is there. You see, you need the certain technology has to reach a certain development so that world conquest can be done. Because it says this guy conquers the world. And so it cannot happen in the 1600s. It cannot happen in the 1800s. Only today, only since the return of Israel in the 1940s, has the nuclear age come at the same time as the return of Israel, which is no coincidence. And anyway, we're in the end time. I know I'm very wordy. I'm sorry for going off on a tangent, talking about the millennium and so on. But the idea is the technology for world conquest is here, so that by implication we are in the end time. Now, Martin Luther, in the 1500s, he nailed his complaints, his 95 complaints on the door in the year 1517. And he was one of the great. He was about, I would say, the greatest Christian since Saint Paul. But this man, Martin Luther, was stupid enough to think that he was living in the end time. And apparently he did not realize that world conquest is part of what goes with the end time. And these other guys, you know, I'm not saying he's a stupid man. He's a better man better Christian than I am. But I'm saying on this particular subject, he was off. He was not up to not up to snuff. But he's still a greater man than I am. I will admit that. Be sure to check out the description underneath this video. I'm going to try to give close to a full transcript. Well, let's say half of a transcript. Now, I've noticed that I used to be able to press a button and edit what was in the description. And lately, I have not been able to do that. I'll have to try to find somebody who can help me, you know, rectify the situation, because I want to be able to edit this thing, edit the words in the description. Please leave comments, or you could even email me at joegracegrace@gmail.com. To find more of my videos, just find the J in the circle, in the orange circle. And I have about 54 videos, and most of them are not getting much traffic. And it's probably because YouTube is basically hiding the videos, and you know, I really should try to find a way to make my videos more accessible. If you have any information along those lines, email me at the address that I just gave you. Thank you so much for your interest and your comments.